Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Michelle Graff, and I'm the editor-in-chief at National Jeweler. I'm pleased to welcome you to the latest episode of My Next Question, National Jeweler's webinar series sponsored by RDI Diamonds. Today's session is hosted by our Associate Editor for News, Lenore Fedow, and features Huntington Jewelers owner Jennifer Calleri and Mike Schwartz, Vice President of Retail Partnerships at Happy Returns. Before I turn it over to Lenore to get the webinar started, I just want to let our attendees know that if they have a question, they can type it into the Zoom Q&A box. I'll be back on at the end of the discussion to moderate the Q&A. Also, today's session is being recorded and will be available on the National Jeweler website this coming Friday, January 15th. Now I'll turn it over to Lenore and her guests. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Michelle. And thank you, Jenny and Mike, for joining us. We're going to be talking about returns today. But to start off, I just want to give you both a chance to introduce yourselves. Jenny O, I'll start with you.
Everybody, thanks so much for having me, Lenore. I'm really excited to be here. I'm Jenny O, and I'm raised in Vegas, been in the industry over 20 years, and own Huntington Jewelers right here in Vegas, baby. And I love this industry. I'm super excited. I miss you guys so much. It's nice to see people in person, though, on a screen. Hey.
And Mike, if you could tell us a bit about yourself and also what Happy Returns does.
Of course. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to meet you, Jenny O and Lenore and the rest of your fantastic fan base here. My name is Mike Schwartz. I'm the Vice President of Retail Partnerships at Happy Returns. I've been in technology sales for the better part of my 15-year sales career. Been focused on e-commerce, particularly on internationalization and building out infrastructure for e-commerce operators in large business settings. So, I'd love to give any perspective I can to that extent to you guys and your viewers. A quick intro about Happy Returns. You could guess sort of by the name of our business that we tackle the painful challenges of returns online, which is pretty much the only part of the e-commerce process that really has a tremendous amount of friction these days, right? We like to refer to ourselves as the operating system of returns. We do that because we have a vertical business that handles all of the returns pains for our merchants. So we work with big and small folks that sell mostly apparel, fashion, shoes, luxury goods online. We have a software layer that makes it really easy to automate exchanges and returns for your website. And then we have what we call our in-person return bar network. We have 2,600 locations where you can drop stuff off in person. We then have a reverse logistics infrastructure, East and West Coast hubs that do what is called processing. So we actually take goods, we make them sellable, or we just send them right back to our customers. We do that in a way that is fundamentally more efficient than sending onesie twosie orders. We're actually aggregating and totes like these at locations that I mentioned before: FedEx office, Cost Plus World Market, Paper Source, and then aggregate those shipments and send them back to our brands.
Gotcha.
Yep, you bet.
So we're going to start off obviously talking about returns. So with the COVID-19 restrictions in place, especially this holiday season, we've seen a rise in online shopping. And my personal experience is when I shop online, I tend to return things way more than if I went to the store and I saw it myself. So, I mean, starting with Mike, do you think the rise in online shopping this holiday season is also going to mean a rise in returns?
Of course. I mean, increase e-commerce means increase at least online returns, right?
Right.
I'm sure that we can all relate to returning more stuff that you buy online than the ones you that you buy in store. Rule of thumb is it's 2 to 4 times higher return rate, right? So in-store shopping, say 10% return rate, online can be as high as 40%. Key reasons there's kind of 2 different profiles. One is I can't see this pair of shoes or whatever it is. So I'm going to buy small, medium, and large size of it and then send back whatever I don't want. And then the second group is basically dissatisfaction with the purchase, buyer's remorse, that kind of thing.
Right. And so Jenny, I know that your store offers online shopping as well. In your experience, have you seen more returns than usual this season?
You know, I'm a brick and mortar retailer and I do have an e-commerce platform on my website, but I work a different way with my clients. I'm more of a stylist and a customized shopping experience. And so I do tons of wish lists. I work directly with my ladies and or men, and I contact their spouse. And I mean, I will sell, high ticket items over a text message. And so my return rate is very, very low. Um, you know, After what are we in? Second week of January here, I've had no returns. I've had a couple exchanges and that's it, because I think one of my strengths is I qualify very well from the get-go. Anybody into buying anything that they're not going to keep. On a second note, I don't have a very low ticket item inventory. And so
Right.
I feel that when you are shopping in a more high-end dollar amount, you're going to think long and hard before you buy it. You're going to make
Right.
sure that
Yeah,
it's
that's a fair point. Right.
right.
So the next question I have is for Mike. What effect do you think COVID-19 is going to have on how we return items?
There's a lot. I mean, if we want to start with the actual consumer, consumer wants options, and they will increasingly expect better, more convenient, cost-effective options as they adopt e-commerce at a higher rate, right? I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I've done now the majority of my shopping online since March.
Right.
And since I'm spending all my money on that channel, and and I'm rewarding those brands and those retailers that are making it easy for me to shop there, I expect that level of service and quality to go up over time, right? Because I'm in a large part making my decision on where to shop based on how easy is it to not just buy, but also return, of course.
Right.
That takes us to sort of, like, what do we expect? Excuse me, like, what will the effect be for consumers? Is just that, right? I expect as a consumer to get my money back right away when I make a return. At least when I shop in person, that takes risk out of the equation for me to buy something expensive like a jewelry, right? Like a high value item. So what does that mean? What is convenience to me? And the mission behind a lot of our business is rapid refund, make it very easy for me to go and return in person. I don't want to have to touch anybody. I want to get in and out as fast as I can, right? I'll show you a QR code, you scan it. I don't want to have to box it. I don't want to have to print a label because I don't even own a printer anymore. You can see I'm actually in my office now. Right. I literally come to my office during COVID to print labels to return shirts. It's crazy. So, I don't want to stand around I love USPS, but like, I don't want to stand around in USPS in a line of people for any time for that matter, right? I don't want to have to do it for 15 minutes. And, that's really what it is all about to me in terms of the effect of COVID on consumer expectations regarding returns. I think that, the refund thing is a real problem because of the backlog. So let's switch over to kind of from a business perspective, what we should expect from COVID and returns. As we all saw on every news channel and every Twitter feed regarding logistics, is that we got slammed. The whole logistics infrastructure globally couldn't keep up with demand, right? So you fundamentally had a misbalance in terms of supply and demand, which resulted in two things. One, quality of service goes down, and two, prices go up, right? So if I put my thing in the mail, it takes 6 weeks to go back to a warehouse takes a look at it, says, yes, we put it back in inventory, give them the refund back. Customer is going to go on the Better Business Bureau and complain. E-commerce manager or whoever it is, the customer support at the brand is going to say, we're losing customers, like conversion rates are going down, retention rates are going down, average order value is going down because people are slamming us in social media. So businesses are really struggling to figure out a way to optimize that return path for their goods and maintain a good customer experience. There's all kinds of different innovations around that. I think that obviously this is a really important one of those.
Right. And I mean, to your earlier point about, not wanting to be in contact with people too much and limiting the amount of time that you want to spend, at the post office or wherever you're shipping things back. So Jenny, I know you said that you don't have a lot of returns at the moment, but let's say I bought something from you, I want to return it. How is that experience different now because of COVID? Are you guys sanitizing the items or cleaning them in some way, or how would that work hypothetically?
Oh, yeah, of course, of course. And I feel for you, Mike. I mean, what'd you say? You have 2,600 different products that you're dealing with or something of that nature?
We have 2,600 locations that you can
Location,
go
there you
and
go.
drop off in person. So
Wow. But
just a
all
quick
different kinds of
plug.
products, right? All different products you're working with.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so I feel for you there. And, we have a unique, position here because jewelry doesn't expire. It's, easily cleanable, sanitized, polishing. So really, I mean, the process of taking jewelry back hasn't changed. What's changed is the customer experience, right? With the mask and staying apart and, not touching things, directly, putting it in a tray. But jewelry can easily be clean, sanitized, and put back out for sale, no problem. Obviously, if something is worn for lengths of time, you're not, my return policy is you have 14 days and it can't be worn, not sized, altered in any way. So pretty much it's like a new piece that's been sitting in a box. She opens it, she doesn't like it, or he doesn't like it, and it comes right back. And it's a very easy, simple process. And it's service. When you're a small independent retailer, you have to excel at your service and your product. So the change with COVID hasn't changed much in how we deal with the actual merchandise. It's just
Right.
more of the formality of, the coverings and such.
Right. And then again, speaking to health and safety concerns, Mike, I know that Happy Returns offers contactless returns. Can you tell me a little bit about how that works?
Sure. So let's start with the point where you decide you just don't want this garment or this piece of jewelry anymore. You're going to go on the brand's website. You're going to look for the little return button at the very bottom of the page usually. What I think is kind of interesting is that brands are starting to differentiate on the basis of this step of the journey, right? Some folks are making it a little bit easier. They're putting their return language towards the top of the screen. When they initiate the return, nobody wants to talk to customer support. I totally understand that, like, if it's a high value item, you want to get a shot at figuring out, what was wrong with this purchase, right? What is it that we could do to have you walk out of the store with another product in your hand and make you a happy customer once again? So during that return and exchange, we call it a return and exchange flow. It's this tool that we built that you can add onto your website. We tried to mimic that same experience, right? As you click through, we ask you, like, what was wrong with this purchase? What could we have done better? Let's check to see what else is in stock that we can put back in your hands quickly to fulfill the brand promise we originally made to you. So that's kind of one thing, and maybe we can go into, we call that one-click exchange. We'll talk about that later. But as soon as you hit the exchange button or the return button, you get a QR code in your email. And kind of like I said before, what you do is you basically just walk into one of our, what we call location partner locations. FedEx office is one of those. Walk up to the folks behind the desk at FedEx office. They know the routine. They basically just scan your code. You drop off the product with them. You don't have to put it into a box. Walk away. Get the refund immediately. So, I mean, you're not standing around in line for a little while. And FedEx office is a great customer experience. They've done a really good job of making it feel very professional. They know their job. They are a staple of logistics and shipping in the United States. So that's really what it's all about. I mean, it's really all about making this super duper easy for everybody to make a really quick, painless return. We have something like 70% of all Americans are within a 10-minute drive from a FedEx office. That's why we thought they'd be a great partner.
Right.
But we also work with, Cost Plus World Market, Paper Source, as I mentioned before, a lot of college, university campuses, Simon Malls, Westfield Malls. But it's interesting. It's like the QR code thing. Well, I should say, COVID has accelerated a lot of innovation in e-commerce. the QR code thing was being used previously by Amazon and Kohl's and, you know, a lot of other weird applications, but now you see it becoming really common in all kinds of different stuff. Payment, for example. I think the American consumer now identifies that as something that just makes it a lot easier, and it shows you that you're dealing with somebody that has modern infrastructure, right?
Right.
QR code, boom, you're done. You don't have to enter your email address, talk to a customer service rep, find your 7-digit order number, you know, dig up the old credit card number that you were, you know, which credit card did I use to make this transaction? Like,
Right.
You don't need any of that anymore, because, you know, we found a very easy way to reduce the risk of fraud. Authenticate that person simply just by saying, you know, here's the code that you show when you want to drop something off. It's just that simple.
Yeah. And I mean, to your point, I mean, the returns can be the worst part of the whole shopping experience. So, I mean, in your opinion, Mike or Jenny, whoever wants to jump in first, how important is an easy returns process to overall customer loyalty?
I mean, it's got to be easy. You know, they're not going to come back if it's not, right?
Right.
Now, again, like I personally deal with a higher ticket item. And so, you know, if I want to keep this client and work towards something new, I need to make it effortless for them,
Right.
you know, or else I'm not going to have another shot. Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think from our standpoint, this is kind of a cute way of describing the core mission and the beliefs of our business, but you cannot call your business Happy Returns if that doesn't create a great customer experience.
Right.
And if that customer experience doesn't result in more loyalty. So like, for example, we live and breathe literally on a weekly basis, all hands meetings to review the NPS scores and the NPS comments of our customers, right? So we get good ones. Like I said, I don't know, maybe I didn't, sorry. After millions and millions of returns, we have an average of 94 NPS. So if you compared that to the NPS of pretty much any other merchant who doesn't necessarily focus on just returns as their core business, maybe Zappos, right? Or Nordstrom. It's heads and tails. It's an order of it's a standard deviation, I should say, if we're speaking in statistical terms. It is a significantly higher rate of satisfaction than we see with other models. So we look, what was bad? Could the customer not find what we call a return bar, like that FedEx office location? Did they have a hard time, locating their order? And we're continuously sort of optimizing sort of what that customer journey looks like. And we can very quantitatively, very explicitly say that if a customer has a higher net promoter score, then they will have a higher level of loyalty, and they will spend more money each time they shop with that that merchant over and over again, right? So up retention, up average order value, up conversion rates, if you remove that friction from the return process. Because right now it's like, I don't know, I prefer shopping at Nordstrom, not because it's the cheapest option, but because I know that I have zero risk that if I just don't really like this, thing that's really important to me, this fantastic shirt, I have no risk that I won't be able to return it. And I don't really know what my sizes are, right? Because I'm a man and I don't know things that are smart like that, even though I now have a newborn child and should. So.
Listen, oh my God. You know what? During COVID, my husband, he lost like 150 pounds and he had no clothes, right? He had no clothes. And you said it, Zappos is my favorite online retailer because it's effortless as far as shipping and receipt, returns, free. I work all the time. And so it's convenient for me. But, just talking about like my business, I'm a source for the unusual. And, as I'm hearing you talk about shopping and, you like Nordstrom, people come here because they know that they're going to get something that nobody else has. But also going into it, I'm letting them know that, listen, we want you to be happy. We want you to love the piece. And so it's really important to me as the owner of the store that they know that they're not stuck with anything and the process is going to be effortless, because the end result is extreme service, happiness, like you, happy returns, right? We want it to be a happy experience overall.
Right. So, Funnily enough, I used to work in customer service for a jewelry company. And I was dealing with people who had spent a very significant amount of money. And they would call my department when they weren't happy with it and they wanted to return it. So, this company, they had a set return policy in place. And, that would be my go-to when speaking with, these customers. But, for someone who had spent a really significant amount of money, sometimes they didn't want to hear that. So my question for Jenny is, are you very strict, like to the letter with your return policy, or is there a little bit of wiggle room depending on what it is?
There has to be wiggle room. I mean, I have to put something on the back of the receipt, right?
Right.
But again, we've been around 70 years. We've been in this spot for 20. We are one of the oldest retailers in Vegas. I have a very strong following, being in the retail side, in the supplier side, being in the industry, people knowing what I do, what my specialties are. And so when they come in to see me, yes, like, come on, it's on the back of the receipt. But again, I want you to be happy. If you're spending $5, $10, $40, $50,000 with me, if it's day 16, am I gonna, not make you happy? No, absolutely not. You know what I mean? So there has to be flexibility in whatever you do. And again, I'm not a large corporation that has, 2,600 locations around the country.
Right.
I'm a one store operation, and I can have this flexibility. If I grow to, mega retailer, which that's not in my plan, I'd rather serve the classists and not the masses, but that's okay. I'm going to be flexible, but I have to have a policy that starts somewhere.
Right. Sure. No, that makes sense. And Jenny, can you tell me about a time that you dealt with an unhappy customer successfully?
Oh gosh, I'm very direct and I want to make you happy, but at the same time, something's got to give. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
I really can't say that I've had too many experiences with unhappy returns, because again, it's my reputation. And so what is it? What's the rule of thumb? Like one unhappy person tells 20, you know what I'm saying? Right. So I try to swallow my pride and bite my tongue. And if we're not getting along, if there's a conflict, like, give me your card, here's your money. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. You know what I'm saying? But honestly, like I have fired customers before. There's not many. But again, if I've done everything in my power to help you and I'm losing money on the deal, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to deal with you anymore. Like, it's a learning experience. And, I have this 7-year-old business, but I bought it 3 years ago. I've been in the business over 20 years, but I'm still a new business owner. So I'm still learning too. You know what I'm saying? Like, I do the best that I can to please you, but at the end of the day, I still have to make money. And if I have to learn from my experience and cut my losses, just like somebody buys a piece of jewelry, over in the Caribbean or something, and the stones come back to me and they're glued in, I'm sorry, that's not my fault, right? Cut your losses and move on and learn from it. So, I can't really speak to one particular experience, but I've had them. I mean, we've all had them.
Sure.
But we learn from it. And if I have to cut my losses and not, just to say, here you go, and move on. That's it. Move on. Learn and move on. The only thing that's constant in our world is change. And this COVID time has definitely all taught us a little something about how to adapt, right, to this new customer experience, if you will. Yeah. Like I said, I have an e-commerce website, but I'm a source for the unusual. And so what I find people buying on e-commerce is things that they can shop all over the place, right? Big, huge brands have the same product at retailers all over the country, right? So my experience online has been nil. And I'm not really trying to go there right now. I have it available and I'll ship and return, no problem, like my favorite retailers do for me. But I haven't had many experiences with what you have, Mike. Yeah. I'm more an in-person. I'm an in-person girl, So people still want to come and shop in person. They still want to touch and feel, even though we have this crazy time. I'm slammed. I am busy. I can't sit down and take a break to eat. Right. Like, the doors go and I'm, seeing what's going on here. I think somebody wants to return something right now. No, just kidding.
It's funny. I mean, as you're talking, and you bring so many thoughts to mind. The last point you made, so there are a couple things. One was fraud, right? If something gets shipped off to Jamaica and then all of a sudden it comes back as like, I don't know, looks like a 15-year-old decided to glue it back together.
I just had one yesterday. I love how they go and buy something in Jamaica and then they want to come to me to fix the problem. I'm like, why didn't you come to me in the first place?
So what's so interesting is, like, from our standpoint, obviously we are focused on e-commerce for the most part.
Sure.
But we have built a product that is designed for small, medium, and large size merchants. And so when we're trying to design for all the different use cases and all the different potential risks, like with fraud, right? It becomes really interesting to listen to Jenny O talk about, here's the reality of what it's like to have an in-person business and retain customers over time, even in a very competitive environment, right? There are a lot of jewelers out there, right? I mean, you got to kind of pick your niche for sure, but it really does come down to relationship building and creating a best, a great customer experience at an affordable price for the merchant, And, I mean, we think about this every single day. Fraud is a pretty big problem. What's to stop me from sort of just saying like, hey, I'm going to return this thing in a box. I'm just going to put a brick in the box and send it back to you, and I'm going to expect my refund, So yeah, obviously we have, lots of controls and a tremendous amount of intelligence built into our tools, I should say, to mitigate as much fraud as possible, because it's impossible to mitigate all of it, right? But I think that one thing that you can do is, and this is something that's really hard to do in e-commerce, is to verify that you actually received the goods before issuing a refund. That's something that you can't substitute for e-commerce. Like the in-person aspect of a lot of this stuff is just, you can't substitute. That's all. And so, Happy Returns really does find ourselves at the intersection of sort of that online and offline shopping experience, because we are literally enabling offline return for an online purchase. And I think that as we continue to go down this road, I hope that COVID goes away as soon as possible. Please, let's get those vaccines done and let's make sure everybody's healthy. But I just think we'll see a lot more innovation at the intersection of digital commerce and physical e-commerce, or excuse me, physical commerce.
Right. And so, Mike, speaking of some of the tools that you guys have available, I know Happy Returns offers reporting and like data analytics features. What can the data that you guys collect tell a retailer about their customer?
Well, we can start at the very beginning. Supply chain, product design, right? If we see a spike all of a sudden in a garment being too small, let me take it one step back even further. When we're initiating return or exchange with the software product that I mentioned earlier, we ask, right? Like, what didn't you like about this product? Again, we're trying to sort of replicate that in-person shopping experience. What are you trying to do if you're the store clerk, or if you're Jenny O? Like, how can I make you happy? What can we do to put a product in your hand when you walk out of the store? So we ask important questions like, was it too small? Was it too large? If it was, would you like the next size up? And then you can start seeing some type of pattern in, maybe this SKU it's just built too small, right? So at that point, you can feed that back to a product team. And if the product team looks at the design and says, well, we're not really designing this thing any smaller than SKU B, or SKU A isn't designed different than SKU B. Okay, now let's look at the manufacturing and the supply chain. And if it was heated, right? If it sat around a container in Las Vegas sun for 6 months and it shrank. So you can start looking at, the actual supply chain to knock out kinks. It's definitely an edge case. For the most part, what we want to do is inform what that actual journey looks like what the user experience is on an e-commerce store. So better product descriptions, informing your customer, this product fits small, given feedback we've had. So that's kind of an easy tweak to the user experience or the interface that the customer sees when they're doing their shopping. Other easy things are, we do collect that Net Promoter Score on every single order. Whenever you complete a transaction whenever you complete a return with happy returns, you get a survey that says, would you refer this to a friend? Yes or no? And we get a scale 0 to 10. There's a little text field that you can give your input there, right? And so that the things that people say are really great. I mean, they're very actionable in a short term. So that your customer support team, Lenore, as you probably know, can look at it and be like, uh-oh, like product ABC is melting, or, or I don't know. It seems to be, has some deficiency.
Reviews, you gotta love reviews, right? I mean,
yeah.
And I love the people who take the time to do them. It's so challenging as I'm looking at my inbox with 5,000 emails, But I mean, thank God for the people who do the reviews. That's a huge reason why I'm successful, because I have all these great Google reviews. Totally. And just like you said, you kind of have this effortless situation that you get, you send a link, click on the button, are you happy 1 to 10? And boom. That's mine. Google, I'm linked up with Podium through my POS software. And as soon as a repair or sale or, any transaction is made, they get this link and they rate my service. So that's a huge deal. It's just getting people to do it. Right.
Totally. I think what's kind of surprising is that I honestly don't think that, maybe it's not so surprising, but a lot of merchants just don't understand their returns. Like they don't see a pattern because the data isn't really available. And you'd have to spend a lot of time to really go through a big Excel spreadsheet and say like, oh, okay, we're seeing a pattern. This one, this product returns at a rate that's 15% greater than this one. And we do have a bunch of analytics capability, and we do, make it easy and bite-sized for the merchant to understand. But I think that, especially when you have like a transaction happen on day 1, a return happen on day 2, and then that same customer comes back on day 15, it becomes very difficult to originate that day 15 transaction to the day 1. And so you can't really see, it's difficult to see like, well, do we count that as an exchange, or is that just a new order, or is that like 2 orders for one customer, or is that really just one? And so that it becomes very difficult for the brand or the retailer or the merchant to make smart decisions based on, like what they see coming back, because the data, again, just not easy to consume or make use of.
Right.
Makes sense. As I'm thinking about my latest Zappo return from the holiday, which was actually more of an exchange because I returned some things, right? And then I just had a few more shipped out. But yeah, that is interesting. And, when you asked me to be part of this, Lenore, I was like, I really don't have a big return situation. I don't. And I'm grateful for that. Don't get me wrong, they happen. But, it's, I think a big part, again, being like a smaller independent retailer is qualifying up front. My exchanges are more than my returns, for sure.
Right.
Sure.
And I mean, in terms of jewelry, what are like the most popular reasons for a return or an exchange?
Of course, it's, the last minute on a whim, I need something, and her taste is, champagne and his is beer, and so, that's the biggest deal for me anyways, because don't get me wrong, I have, a couple $500, price pointed pieces here, but quality comes first in everything I do. So my $500 item is going to be far superior than your, mass market $500 item, so, it's more of like, oh, that's $500. You know what I'm saying? Where she might have expected, or he might have expected something a little more, bigger for the look for the money.
Okay.
Right.
Gotcha. So the last question I have here is for Mike, and it's about sustainability, something that's becoming increasingly important to consumers. So e-commerce returns are responsible for, just billions and billions of tons in landfill waste. What can retailers do to sort of downplay or offset that carbon footprint?
There's a lot. I mean, the first answer is try not to generate it in the first place, right?
Sure.
We talked a little bit about the data you can use to improve the customer experience, to avoid, I mean, even Jenny, you just said it, if she can qualify up front and make sure the customer knows what they're getting, they're not going to return it, at least not as they're going to do it at a lower rate. So making sure that you have great product description, of course, making sure that your customer knows what they're getting and that you fundamentally have a really important, valuable product. That is step one, of course. The actual packaging itself is sometimes insane. I think that it's a brand decision. It really is. It's a customer experience decision to put a tremendous amount of cardboard or plastic or metal around the actual product itself. But obviously there's large sustainability initiatives to reduce the amount of packaging that your goods come in. Then let's say, okay, you've got the box. What should I do to reduce the amount of waste? Let's say you order a pair of shoes, right? How can I reduce the amount of waste that this thing is going to generate? Most boxes get thrown out as soon as you get them, or they get recycled. And I don't know if your listeners and you guys are aware of the actual price per ton of recycled cardboard, but it's extremely low right now, mostly because China consumes a lot of our recycled fibers, and they in recent years have stopped accepting it because of an issue called contamination. So in fact, a lot of the cardboard that we try to recycle ends up in a landfill, which is a shame because the material is perfectly good to be reused. So so we toss the box out when we get the pair of shoes, then we go and buy another box to put it back in the mail. Then the box goes to the brand or the warehouse, wherever it's going to go, and then they throw it out. So, shameless plug for Happy Returns. When you give us a return, it goes into one of these reusable totes that's behind the desk at FedEx office or Cosmos World Market, et cetera. We ship it back to our processing hubs. The processing hubs then palletize those goods in these guys again and ship them back. So what you're doing is not only are you removing a tremendous amount of that paper and cardboard waste from the landfills because you're not having to buy that second box, but you're also eliminating a lot of the carbon that's going to be emitted when you ship onesie twosie orders back to a warehouse, right? So in that box, you get 30 units or even, sometimes north of that. So there's no dead space in the actual container. When I ship anything back to Amazon or whoever, there's 90% of the container space is open, right? It's dead space. So your fuel, which is a proxy for carbon, right? Per garment or per product that you're going to return is 15, 20, 30x what it could be otherwise if you were able to get economies of scale moving things around the country.
Right. Gotcha. Well, that is it for my questions for you guys. I really appreciate you being here. I'm going to turn it over to Michelle to see if we have any audience questions that came in for you guys.
Oh, thank you guys so much, Lenore, Mike, and Jennifer. That was a really interesting discussion, and I now feel completely guilty about my online shopping because I did not know that all those cardboard boxes were not getting recycled. So I have to start thinking about that. And a thanks to our sponsor, RDI Diamonds. As a reminder to our guests, or to our attendees, you can still type questions into the Zoom Q&A box at the bottom of your screen there. While we put together the Q&A, I just want to say a quick word about RDI Diamonds. RDI Diamonds, the selection you want, the quality you need. Thousands of diamonds, that's just the beginning. Our RDI offers a wide range of services and support to help you succeed, from flexible memo options to a partnership with De Beers Group Industry Services to generous stock options and cost-efficient shipping. RDI's goal is to provide the highest quality of both care and diamonds to your store. Visit rdidiamonds.com today to learn more. That is rdidiamonds.com. And now let's get started with our listener questions. Jenny O, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm super fantastic. How are you?
Well, thank you.
Do I get to see you?
No, I told you I haven't washed my hair. Um,
Me neither. This is what you do. You just need one of these.
yeah, I mean, that's pretty, maybe I'll look into getting one of those,
See?
but not online in case I have to return it. Um,
There you go.
um,
Try.
this first question is definitely for you and not for Mike. What type of support do you look for, appreciate, and wish you had from your vendors around holiday returns?
Honestly, I am so blessed with amazing suppliers and amazing clients, because obviously if I can't sell the goods, they're not going to supply me, right? So I am taken care of extremely well. One of the things that I do though, when the product comes in, is I really inspect it, because if I do a lot of color, I work with a lot of color. I'm a gemologist and I love color. That's one of my competitive edges here. And if a stone is abraded, if, I see any prong work damage, scratches in the metal. So I do a thorough inspection of the merchandise that comes to me before it goes out to my floor. Now, if I can ask my suppliers to help me out, it would be to do a better job of inspecting and making sure it's refurbished before it comes to me. So you were talking about your RDI sponsor and how they offer memo. So a ton of suppliers would be happy to put their merchandise in multiple stores around the country. And with that being said, if I have it and then, it goes right to, the retailer in Arizona and I haven't taken care of it, then it's going to come damaged to them. So I would ask if my suppliers would do a better job of QCing their own product before it comes to me if it has been elsewhere.
But you're happy with how they work with you as far as
I
returns
am.
go? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's all in the presentation before you enter into a relationship. This is a huge relationship business. I'm in a relationship with my clients. I have clients that have been with me for 15 years. And you know what? From the start, if I buy a piece of merchandise and we have an understanding of how this relationship is going to work, there's no problem. If I enter into it like I just buy a bunch of merchandise and when I want to send it back, there's a problem, then shame on me for not working with them the right way from the beginning. Does that
And
make
shame,
sense?
and shame on you then for also not knowing what your clients want to buy, because like that's part of it too, like knowing what your clients are going to want.
Absolutely. But there's the old 20% sales of 80% of your stock, right? So you have to
Yep.
have that understanding with your supplier to begin with
Yep.
when you want to give things back. And I need to take care of it myself for when I give it back to them.
Okay. The next question, I have a couple more for Jenny, a couple for Mike, but I'm going to throw one to Mike right now. And this is just a curiosity. So you obviously, part of what your company does is you want to get people returns quickly. And you mentioned reducing fraud. Has anybody actually ever tried to return something just random? Like you mentioned, like put a brick in a box and send it back. Do people do that?
Of course. What's so interesting about sorry, I know that Jenny, you're not doing a lot of e-com, and I keep on going back to e-commerce. But what's so interesting about e-commerce is just that there are no boundaries, right? There are no barriers. Anybody from any country at any time can just take a run at you with fraud. Fraud's a big deal at every corner of e-com. So at payment and returns, customer support. There's just a lot of different versions of scams. So we get things that are as unusual as bricks and iPads and anything that has some weight. Maybe the iPad actually was on accident. I don't imagine anybody would want to give away a $300 device, but you do see a lot of really crafty folks trying to find a way to game the system, right? And so what's actually really interesting is it goes to the extent of, in some cases, organized crime. So we've seen Asian mafia literally buy, they'll steal credit cards by the tens of thousands, or you can buy stolen credit cards online, buy stuff with it, and then try to get a refund on that product, either at the merchant that they originally bought it from or at another one. So credit card gets canceled, no one knows where the transaction came from, but all of a sudden this person's getting, they're showing a second form of payment to get credited back that value of those goods. So you certainly see it at every category, every industry, every business that is trying to scale their e-commerce operations is unfortunately becoming painfully aware that they can get ripped off about 100 different ways. And so we are acutely aware of those ways with returns, and we've built a lot of really sophisticated capability to reduce fraud with returns.
Good for you. That's awesome.
Thank you. That's really, I mean, it's terrible, but also
It
interesting.
is.
Right.
Yeah.
Karma.
Jenny O, you mentioned earlier when Lenore was asking you about why people return things, someone was curious, does your return policy differ from item to item? Does, for an example, an engagement ring come with a different return policy than another piece of jewelry? Because sometimes people, obviously, the engagement ring comes with a more complicated set of circumstances, let's say. Like somebody could really like the ring, but not want to marry the guy. Obviously, like more risk involved with the engagement ring because there's like a huge life-changing question also attached to it. So it just, someone was curious about that. Does your return policy differ from item to item?
No, I mean, I can't have it. That's way too complex. But, once again, I also do a huge business of buying. So people will come to me. Other retailers will refer people to me when they want to sell their goods. And of course, I've had, the bad engagement or, it doesn't happen. She says no, unfortunately, or I've sold it to them. And then, 6 months later or a year later, the wedding's off. I bought things back from them. That situation is just handled a little bit more gently because obviously with, like you said, engagements awry, there's a lot of emotion there. But again, if I sold it to you at X, obviously there's there. And now if I'm going to buy it back from you, I want to take care of you because I know that you're going to get married again, something else is going to happen, but I can't really buy it from you at what I sold it to you for. So it's not that my exchange or return policy changes but there are situations that you have to handle a little gingerly. And on a second note, Mike, just kind of going back to the thing, because I have huge bias of, estate goods, I have to hold for 30 days. And if something is fraud or it's stolen merchandise, so I have to take care of it and look into it and screen the person who's selling to me to make sure that I'm not taking. So that's a craziness, and wow, good for you for putting all these processes in place. I can't imagine that part of it.
Thank you.
When my e-commerce gets huge, Mike, you're going to be handling my account. Okay.
Sounds great. You bet.
So I'm just going to do one last question here because we're getting a little short on time, and this is for both of you. We talked a little bit about contactless experiences, and these apply whether we're talking about returns or purchases. Do you think this desire for contactless experiences, is this going to continue after COVID-19?
So I'm going to go first. I have a YouTube channel and I did a funny curbside experience, the Jenny O curbside experience when we opened back up. And one of the advantages of my store is that I have this man trap, if you will. So you walk in the door, I buzz you in, you're locked in the glass box, and then I would buzz you in a store. So I was literally like working with clients in my glass box. I'm on the other side of the glass. I can kind of move my hand to the side, and I've got gloves on. And I mean, I'm like selling engagement rings in my glass box. It was hilarious because people still wanted to shop, right? Love isn't canceled. But I really find it challenging to deal with high-end luxury items without touching them, feeling them. And the reality is don't get me wrong, there are people who will go ahead and buy, a $50,000 item online and have it shipped to them and return it if they're not happy. But you need to touch and see before you make that purchase. And so contact buying here. I had very little of it. And I don't think that that's going to change for me.
Yeah. I mean, from my perspective, I don't know. Who knows what's going to happen with COVID and transmission of viruses, but I do know that consumers will only become more and more sort of expecting of convenience. And I mean, what is convenience, right? And value, right? So convenience is, it takes me less time to get what I want. I have more options to get what I want. You know, I think that when we think in terms of daily activities that don't require contact, the things that we have now innovated because of this horrible situation that make our days go faster or gives us back some time, you know, or allows us to get our money back faster. I just don't think that those things will go away because I think that they will more and more become a basis to differentiate on versus their competitors or substitutes for their product. So, you know, we talked about the QR code contactless return thing, not having to box stuff up. I mean, those are added conveniences that consumers, I honestly think consumers will just expect that to be normal from soon on. If I were to look, you know, forward a couple of years, I have a high level of confidence that the returns process and every other returns process of shopping is going to be faster, cheaper, and, you know, just a better experience in general. So like when it comes to contactless, I don't know about transmission of viruses and safety and all that stuff, but I think that if contactless means convenience, then yes, we certainly are. That is not going away. We certainly will see more of that in the future.
Agreed. And the contactless experience that I've changed as you're speaking is I have brought the items to my clients. I have provided a different level of experience, that personal shopping experience, and I brought the goods to them and made this experience just more of a one-on-one situation versus having multiple people in the store at one time.
Well, thank you both so much. And thanks, Lenore, for hosting today. You can tune in to another episode of My Next Question. We'll be back on Tuesday, next Tuesday, and that is the 19th of January. We'll be back on. Brecken Brandstrader is hosting that episode, and she will be interviewing Eric Fritz. He is the manager of the University of Arizona's Gem and Mineral Museum, which is moving to a new, larger space. I'm sorry, I neglected to mention Brecken's webinar is at noon Eastern time. You can read more about it and register at nationaljeweler.com/webinars. I've just dropped that link into the chat. Thank you again for joining us, and please take care out there. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You bet.
Bye-bye.
Pleasure to meet y'all. Bye.